Kalimera.
Kalimera.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To you. I want to thank you for your faithfulness. Most of you have been coming here in the hall. I know there are many individuals that have not been coming, and I know it's because we're here in our sanctuary. So I thank you for being faithful and loving Orthodox Christians. It does not make a difference really where we are, as long as we are together and we recognize that our Lord is present. I want to remind you that on the 28th of October is Ohi Day. It's a very important historical milestone in the history of the Greek people. As a matter of fact, it influenced World War II very much. We're going to celebrate it next Sunday, as the 28th is closer to the date. So I recommend that you bring your children so that they can learn a little bit about that historical date and how that has influenced also the United States, and it also has influenced our church and our spiritual life. So it's not just a historical day, but it also has some religious significance as well. And as I mentioned, for those of you that were here for my catechesis, it is my hope, I'm pretty sure that's the case. Next Sunday will be the last Sunday here, and then we will be back in the church. And I think that if you have not already gone in there to sneak a peek, you'll be quite, I think, pleased with what was done in the church. It makes the church look totally different, totally different. I like it like this because you're really close to me. You may not like it, but I like it, as opposed to being far away. Thank you for your stewardship. We are now getting ready to enter into Thanksgiving. It's hard to believe the summer months have finished. We'll be at Christmas. We're going to be starting a new liturgical year. I want to read something to you, and as you hear it, you tell me if you have heard it before and where you have heard it. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head up high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I awake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear, though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Arise, O Lord, deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. Anybody? Yes. I know you have to know. If you don't know, you're fired. It is, and this is why I know you don't know it, and this is why I'm emphasizing it. Again, it's catechesis and a mistagogia at the same time, a sermon and some catechetics within it. We have at every Orthros service, before every liturgy, there's an Orthros service, a Matin service. There are 6 psalms. It's called the Exapsalmos. 6 psalms, literally. One of them, the first one, is this one. Which means, not only do you have to be at Orthros, it means you have to be at Orthros at the very beginning to hear it. To hear the first one from the Exapsalmos. There's 144 psalms. Why does the church choose 6? That's the first course. It selects 6. And of the 6, it says number 1 is this one. And it's the 3rd psalm. The 3rd psalm of David, of course. He wrote most of them, not all of them. Wrote this one. Does anybody know, before every psalm, it says the Psalm of David, and then it says something. It kind of explains what the psalm is. And it's in the Septuagint Greek, it's in the Hebrew Bible. He put in there, this is a psalm, and it is a psalm of this. Do you know what he uses as the introduction to this psalm. And it is the answer to why it is chosen as the first one of every Orthodox service, of every divine liturgy in the Orthodox Church. Any idea? And those of you who would accept Psalm, if you know, I give you A++, if you know this one. But see, what happens is, especially we as Orthodox Christians, we become complacent. First of all, we don't read the Bible on our own. That's number one. Number two, if we come to church, we hear it, but we really don't know what's going on. No one ever talks to us about it, unfortunately. I want to change that. I want to talk to you about these things. And number three, oftentimes we hear it in a language that we don't understand. So it sounds good, but we don't know what's going on. This psalm, it's a very sad psalm, third psalm. It says it is a psalm of David describing the betrayal of his son. Who is the son? Who is the son of David? That was number one. But Solomon did not betray his father. Which son betrayed his father? See? There we go again. So, part catechesis, part mystagogia. You know the name, Absalom. Absalom. It is a very, very, very important story in the Old Testament. It is so important that the church says, the first son of the Exapsalo, number 3. Why? Because the son of David betrayed him, betrayed his own father. So the next question that I'm going to ask you, of course, is, do you know the story of how Absalom betrayed his father David? And why does the church put it together? I open a parenthesis very quickly by saying, because if we compare it to Jesus, he was betrayed too, wasn't he? And when Jesus is betrayed by Judas, this is really, semantico, this is very significant. When Jesus is betrayed by Judas, he knows it's happening at what time? When does he first acknowledge that he knows that he's going to be betrayed by Judas? At the Last Supper. And what does Jesus say to him? What you're about to do, go and do it. Yeah. And then when he when Judas meets up with him at the garden, where was the garden? But where was it? It was called the Garden of Gethsemane. But in what valley? Again, this is important. The Kidron Valley. The Valley of Kidron. And oftentimes you hear that Jesus crossed the brook Kidron. Well, the story of the betrayal of David by his son takes place in the Kidron Valley. And when Jesus sees Judas coming to him, what does Judas do to him in the garden? He kisses him. And then what does Jesus say?
You betray your teacher with a kiss.
Yeah, you betray your teacher as a kiss. And then when he does the supper, the Last Supper, he says, go quickly and do what you're going to do. Do you know that Jesus is quoting a psalm when he's doing that? He's actually quoting the 41st Psalm of David, again, dealing with the betrayal of his son to him. And he says, Jesus is quoting 41st Psalm. The entire paragraph, so that you have the context, David says, all my enemies whisper against me. They imagine the worst for me, saying, a vile disease has afflicted him. He will never get up from the place where he lies. And here it comes. Even with a kiss, my close friend that I trusted betrays me, the one who I shared my bread with. Now, he's not talking about Judas, right? David is 1,000 years before Judas. Who is he talking to? He's talking about his son. His son betrayed him with a kiss. His son shared bread with him. His son became a disease in the nation. because of him. So the story is that his son was considered, if you read the story, it's in the 15th chapter of 2 Samuel, books of 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, historical books, beautiful books. They tell the background of everything. But the 15th chapter is very, very important. In the 14th chapter, it says a little bit about him, about Absalom. And it says that Absalom, first and foremost, had beautiful hair. His hair was so heavy that when they cut it every year, they couldn't believe that he carried his hair for a whole year without cutting it. He was the most beautiful of men, the most handsome of men. There was not a blemish on him. He was the strongest in the empire, tall, lean, handsome. He had everything going for him except one thing. He was just a prince. What did he want?
King.
He wanted to be king. And so he plotted, this is unbelievable. He plotted against his own father, who was king. He got close to some of the people. He put disease in people's ears about his own father. And then he plotted by kissing him, and his father didn't realize what was going on. He said, I love you, son, you shalom, go in peace, not knowing that he's not going in peace, he's going to start a war. David finds out about it. And in order to save his household and to save a battle, because he didn't want to be fighting with his own son, he leaves Jerusalem. Now here's David, the strongest, the most military, has everything behind him. And because he doesn't want to fight with his son, he says, you know, if my son wants it that badly, he can have it. I don't want to have blood. And so quietly, he asks whoever wants to follow him, and most say, we will follow you anywhere you want to go. And so they have a procession. They have the Ark of the Covenant. This should remind you of Holy Friday when we bring out the Epitaph. They took the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark of the Covenant, they start taking it out, and behind the Ark of the Covenant are all the people with coverings on their heads. And they're crying and they're weeping because they're leaving Jerusalem. Now you know why Jews cover their head. They cover their head and they're weeping because they're leaving their homeland. And they're following the king in disgrace because his own son is trying to kill him. And it says that as they're crossing the Kidron Brook into the Kidron Valley, David stops there and he watches all the people going across. And the little ones, it says. And the little ones. And so he sees it, and the word there, the description, is so powerful. It says, the 23rd verse of the 15th chapter, it says, and all the countryside wept with a loud voice. And the word there in the Hebrew, the countryside, is not just the people wept. It is what do they call it when they, a personification that the trees and the bushes and the flowers were weeping as the people were leaving Jerusalem, following the king across the Kidron Valley, across the brook Kidron, into the Kidron Valley. And all the people crossed over, and the king himself also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people, and they crossed over into the wilderness, and they go in there. The church grabs that, and they love that. Why? Because, and here's the spirituality of it, each and every one of us has been betrayed. Right? If we're honest. We may have been betrayed by a friend, a business partner, I hope not a clergyman, a wife, a husband, a son, a daughter. Maybe we were a betrayer. But all of us have been betrayed. We are all betrayers in that we have betrayed whom? God. We don't want him to be king. We want to be king. I'm in charge of my life, not him. I want to throw him out. Cast him off the throne. And he loves us so much. There's just a thelete. You want it? Here, take it. You want to crucify me? Crucify me if you want to do that. So there is a connection between David and Jesus. And there's a connection between David, Jesus, and us. We're right in the middle of it. Because oftentimes we are Absalom. We are the ones that create the problem. And we have often been the ones who have been betrayed. Now, what is really beautiful here is to understand why in the Gospels, in the New Testament, the Gospel writers, especially John and Luke, want to make sure that we know that when Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane, it was in the Kidron Valley. Not only to connect it here to the story. And by the way, I open up a parenthesis. If you look at some of the hymns of Holy Week, you see there's a connection to David, and Absalom is mentioned numbers of times. That's for another sermon. I close the parenthesis. But there's a connection to the Kidron Valley. So what is the Kidron Valley? The Kidron Valley, and I shared this with you once before, but I'm sure you don't remember. The Kidron Valley is where the priests would take the carcasses of the dead, sometimes people who were criminals, and the carcasses of the sacrifices, when they would burn the sacrifices, the burnt offerings, and they threw it into the garbage. The Kidron Valley was the garbage dump. The Kidron Valley was the place of death, the place where it would stink. And Jesus wants to know that he goes into the Garden of Gethsemane in the Kidron Valley. Spiritually, what a powerful, powerful metaphor that is. That in order for us to resurrect, in order for us to experience the resurrection, we must first die to ourselves. We all have to go into the Kidron Valley, each and every one of us. We all have to be betrayed. We all have to recognize what we have done. We have to cross over, and we have to, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ in the Kidron Valley, we say, you know what? Not my will, but your will be done. That's where he said it, in the Garden of Gethsemane, in the Kidron Valley. And David does the same thing. As soon as they crossed over, he turns to the priests. This is really important. He turns to the priests and he says, take the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem and put it back into the temple. I'm sure the priest said, why? It's the presence of God. We need it for protection. No, David says, God is everywhere. Take the ark and put it back where it belongs, into the temple. Leave it for my son. As for me, he says, I will go into the desert, I will go into the Kidron Valley, and if, here it comes, and if it is God's will that he bring me back, it is God's will that I come back. If it is not God's will, he can do what he wants with me in the Kidron Valley. Do you see the echo of that with Jesus in the Kidron Valley, the Garden of Gethsemane? Take it away if you must, but you know what? Not my will, but your will be done. So the church chooses this psalm, this beautiful psalm, at the beginning of the Orthodox service to prepare us for the liturgy, my friends. It is not just some psalm that we're singing, some 6 psalms that, you know what, this is what we're supposed to do. Kind of like, before a drama, you do A, B, C, or D. Make sure that we do this, put a little salt, a little pepper, a little, It's not a recipe that we are doing here. The church is throwing out these things to us because they have spiritual power to them. But if we don't understand where they come from, if we don't understand how to apply it to our lives, we do the service and we don't understand what's going on. Now imagine going through the liturgy, as I do every time I do a divine liturgy and I hear the Exapsalmo. I think of this story and I say, Frank, have you betrayed Jesus? Has anybody betrayed you this week? Forgive them as Jesus did. And in the death of yourself, and in the death and the crucifixion of what you need to go through the Kidron Valley so that you can experience the resurrection and re-enter Jerusalem, the kingdom of God, knowing that he is king and maybe I am a son of God. What a beautiful thing it is this for us. Such a small thing, but such a powerful thing. And the church fathers were wise to take Psalm 3 and put it first in the Exapsalmo. May you experience that kind of healing. May you forgive if anyone has hurt you. And of course, may we all experience the resurrection, having been in the Kidron Valley, back into Jerusalem. Please rise.